So we've got Cleopatra, Big Bill Zeckendorf, Ronald Reagan, the astronauts from Apollo 11, Bob Hope, and the architect of New York's original World Trade Center. All of these people, I promised, are connected by one multi-billion-dollar development in LA, Century Plaza in Century City. Developer Michael Rosenfeld had hoped to continue on the famous hotel's legacy, redeveloping it into a $2.5 billion condo project with a new hotel. Last week, he lost that dream. The billionaire Reuben brothers foreclosed on the property, swooping up one of West LA's most iconic hotels for just a fraction of the development cost. But let's go back to the very beginning, to Cleopatra, not the person, but the movie. It was 1958, and 20th Century Fox had just greenlit Cleopatra, which turned out to be a total boondoggle for the company. Fox was desperate and realized it could probably make some money off of the land it was sitting on, just west of Beverly Hills. So in 1959, the studio sold a 6-month option to Zeckendorf, the legendary New York developer, to purchase about 180 acres of land Fox owned for $5 million. Zeckendorf tried to flip it and sell the land for $56 million. He called it, quote, an oasis in the midst of a great city. But he failed to score a buyer. He bought the property and leased about 75 acres back to 20th Century Fox, which could still use it for film production. Shortly after that, he found a partner, the Aluminum Company of America, or Alcoa, which was becoming interested in real estate development across the country. Alcoa bought a stake in the land for $38 million. And that was the beginning of Century City. Zeckendorf cashed out in 1963, leaving Alcoa as the sole owner of the land. Alcoa started divvying up the acres, 75 acres for resi, 85 for businesses and a hotel, and the rest for streets and boulevards. For the hotel, it tapped Minoru Yamasaki, the architect behind the original World Trade Center. Yamasaki designed a 20-story structure with a crescent-shaped facade, the hotel we now know today as the Century Plaza Hotel. The hotel opened in 1966. Bob Hope emceed the opening, and it quickly became a destination for the glitterati. In 1969, President Richard Nixon hosted a dinner there for the Apollo 11 astronauts, the first men on the moon. While Reagan was president, he stayed there so often he even had the penthouse named after him. Between 1998 and 2008, the hotel traded 3 times. First, to a group of investors who bought the hotel for $260 million in 1999. Second, to Sunstone Hotel Investors, a REIT which bought it for $293 million. Then, finally, to Michael Rosenfeld, the investor who runs Woodridge Capital Partners, bought the hotel for $367 million, the most any investor had ever spent on a hotel in California on a per-key basis. Rosenfeld had big plans. He wanted to spend $2 billion to demolish the hotel and replace it with 2 towers, one with condos and another with a 240-key hotel. By 2010, Rosenfeld had scrapped his plan after pushback from local politicians and conservancy groups, so he went bigger. He decided to build 2 residential towers behind the hotel, a $2.5 billion project that would leave the hotel intact. 6 years later, Rosenfeld scored city approval and a hefty financing package. There was a senior loan from JP Morgan, a mezzanine loan from Digital Bridge, predecessor Colony Capital, and a huge chunk of EB5 financing. But the real kicker, and what has led us to current events, is that the Reuben brothers held a piece of the senior loan. Rosenfeld said he needed more money, blaming construction delays and various cost increases. He scored extra debt in 2018, but when the pandemic hit, he needed more. The Reuben brothers agreed to provide a $275 million senior mezzanine loan. They also took over a senior lender, assuming that $890 million senior loan from JP Morgan. Now, if Rosenfeld defaulted, the Reubens would get paid out first. All of that new debt allowed Rosenfeld to open the property at the end of 2021. But he couldn't pay the debt back. The Reubens notified Colony Capital that the borrower had failed to repay about $1.8 billion in loans. Actually, foreclosing on the property took months. There was litigation from Colony Capital and the EB5 lenders, which had claimed separately that the Reubens reshuffled the debt stack to essentially deteriorate their holdings. Eventually, the courts gave the Reubens the go-ahead to foreclose. So, on April 6th, they did, taking control of Rosenfeld's $2.5 billion development. The investor brothers made a credit bid totaling a portion of the senior debt. At the end of 2021, as we mentioned, they held an $890 million senior loan on the property, meaning it was sold at just a fraction of what it cost to build. The Reubens own their first piece of LA, and the saga looks to be over, but with real estate, you just never really know.